Hi, I'm Kailash Shambhwani and I'm the CEO of FaceTime Communications. Today I'm going to speak to you about Greynets. Greynets are the biggest challenge for security enterprise managers today. What are Greynets? One way to think about Greynets is to look at applications and see how applications get deployed. Do they get deployed at the enterprise level, at the department level, or at the end user level? And then to look at the behavior of these applications at the network level. Are they well behaved at the network level, or are they evasive at the network level? With this, let's look at a few applications. Let's look at email. When you join a company, you get an email address, and email is an enterprise-wide application. And in fact, it behaves really well at the network level. It's SMTP, it goes through a well-defined port, etc. Let's look at another application. Let's look at web conferencing. Web conferencing typically gets deployed at the department level, but it's very evasive at the network level. Web conferencing uses encrypted protocols, it tunnels through port 80, it does everything it can to get through your security infrastructure as easily as possible. Another evasive application is IM. IM, which also gets deployed at the end user level, tends to again be very evasive at the network level, and we know that the same applies to things like P2P. Now, not all end user applications are evasive. So for example, if you look at web browsing is used at the end user level, and it's actually quite well behaved. Its HTTP is port 80. Another set of applications are adverse spyware. And adverse spyware, in fact, are so far on this axis that they're getting deployed without even the end user knowing about them. And now we're finding that adverse spyware are getting evasive at the network level. This quadrant is what we call Greynets. Now, why do we call them Greynets? We call them Greynets because these applications are not necessarily bad. Some applications like web conferencing and IM can be very beneficial. Other applications like P2P and adverse spyware can be very problematic. What are some of the issues that these applications raise? Well, they represent a vulnerability for you. You've got code that hasn't gone through your quality assurance running on your desktops. That code might have vulnerabilities. They represent security threats. There are viruses and worms that are now propagating through these applications. They represent compliance issues. What kind of communications are happening with these applications, and are you keeping track and logging those communications? They represent management issues. Who's using these applications? How much bandwidth is getting used? Do you have control over all that? So to manage Greynets and to control Greynets, you first need to be able to detect them, which, as we've shown here with the evasiveness, is not easy to do. And once you've detected them, you need to decide what you want to do with them. Do you want to block them? And clearly, you want to block adverse spyware. You probably, although not always, want to block P2P. Or do you want to enable them because there's real business value? For example, you want to enable web conferencing. You want to increasingly enable IM. What does enabling mean? Enabling means you've got to address these issues. You've got to have hygiene. So you've got to check for viruses and worms and spam. You've got to have compliance. You've got to make sure that you're logging all the messaging that's going on in these applications. And you've got to have strong user policies in place. Who can use them? When can they use them? How much bandwidth are they allowed to take? So these applications represent business value, but they also represent threats, neither black nor white. That's why we call them Greynets. And the challenge is, how do you enable the good Greynets while blocking the bad ones?